We know cardio has some benefits, but being able to increase the intensity of your cardio might give you benefits above and beyond that. So I've got 5 benefits of pushing your cardio a little bit harder, maybe into zone 3, maybe so that heart rate's a little bit more like 70, 75, maybe even 80% of your max. Trust me, hear me out on this. So the first one, you might actually live longer. You might improve your longevity, and there's solid data to back this up. So if we look at some research, we can see it. So first, let's look at a study that was published in the Journal of Aging Research. It took a look at people that were active versus not as active, and then they also compared athletes to non-athletes. What they found overall was pretty intriguing, especially when they started looking at intensity. They found that, to no surprise, like regular physical activity ended up causing a decrease in mortality rates, right? It actually ended up increasing lifespan between 0.4 all the way up to 6.9 years. But what's wild is actually increased lifespan up to 4.2 years, even when adjusted for confounders. What does that mean? It means that simply exercising has huge benefits that literally makes you live longer, according to this data. But that doesn't really tell us a lot. That just tells us exercise. So the data really gets stronger when we look at athletes versus non-athletes. They found that athletes tended to live longer, not a huge surprise. But what they found is that athletes that were more aerobic, like soccer players and people like that, they tended to live the longest out of all of these groups. And if you look at the sort of mechanisms, you can understand why. Like, we have a lot of data to back up that higher intensity cardio reduces oxidative stress, can improve cardiovascular disease risk, can lower coronary artery calcium, and then also improve the endurance of our actual cells. When our cells are more resilient to higher intensity cardio, then they become more resilient to other things. It's a very colloquial way of putting it, but you're essentially building up that endurance of the cells, so to speak. Now, let's look at some more data to understand intensity ranges and also to understand how much, because this helps us, again, understand that maybe higher intensity is better. So with this, we look at a study that was published in 2022 in the journal Circulation that took a look at 116,000 people over the course of about 30 years. They found in this paper that between 75 and 149 minutes of vigorous activity per week led to a 19% reduction in all-cause mortality and a 31% reduction in cardiovascular disease mortality. Okay, well, what's next? They found that moderate intensity at 150 minutes to 299 minutes led to a decrease in all-cause mortality of also 19%, but only a 25% reduction in cardiovascular disease mortality. What this tells us right here is that you can do a little bit less higher intensity cardio and get just as much all-cause mortality benefit and actually even more cardiovascular disease mortality benefit than if you were to do moderate activity, literally up to almost twice as much. So doing less cardio but pushing a little bit harder gets you more longevity benefit than doing moderate cardio for longer. Essentially, what we are getting here is that more intense activity, as far as cardio is concerned, is better when it comes down to longevity. But once you start exceeding like the 300 to 400 minutes per week, then it starts to have a drop off. So there is too much, but higher intensity does seem to be better. The next one is weight loss. There was a study published in Obesity Reviews that looked at a whopping 149 studies. What they found in this paper is that all exercise increases fat loss. That's no real surprise. And not a huge difference between aerobic and anaerobic overall when you just take people that don't exercise and make them exercise. But when we look at another paper that was published in the Journal of Investigative Medicine, this is where it gets more intriguing, because they found that there is a relationship with VO2 max and weight loss. They had subjects do 10 weeks of moderate intensity cardiovascular work. And what they found is that the better the VO2 max per kilogram, so based upon their body weight, what their VO2 max was, the more weight loss they had. So the higher the VO2 max, the higher their ability to actually perform higher intensity cardio work directly correlated with more weight loss. So we have something working there. Again, is it just more calories being burned? Perhaps. Or are there other systems and processes that are happening there? What we do have to be paying very close attention to, though, and this is hugely important for weight loss, is that if you start increasing the intensity of your cardio, it becomes increasingly more important to add protein in. Okay, you need to start treating your cardio just like you would treat weight training. You are breaking down muscle tissue when you do cardio too. Just like if you're weight training, you're going to add protein in. You're going to eat more meat. You're going to add a shake here and there. You're going to do what you can to get more protein. And you need to change the way that you think of your cardio. Cardio is not just I'm working my heart and working fat. You're working muscle and you need to repair that muscle. I put a link down below for the shake that I typically use if you use protein shakes. It's called SunWarrior's Active Line. It is a plant-based shake. I alternate my whey shakes and my plant-based shakes. I go back and forth because I like both and I like different benefits. The cool thing about SunWarrior's Active Line, first of all, that's a 20% off discount link. It's that link down below, 20% off whatever you want from SunWarrior, not just their protein, but their active protein line. Like, you can look at the ingredients yourself. It is seriously cool stuff. Okay, it's got a probiotic mix in there. It's got enzymes in there. It's utilizing pumpkin seed protein and pea protein. So it's combining these proteins to get a complete protein. But pumpkin seed protein is not only mineral rich, but it's one of the best plant-based proteins that's out there. Not to mention their flavors are unreal. So they've put it all together and really have this where it's almost a complete food. It's not like you're just getting protein in. You're actually getting minerals and nutrients and digestive components that help you break this stuff down. So that link down below, trust me, you're gonna love it. It's 20% off for SunWarrior's products, but I recommend their Active Line, which is linked down below in the top line. This next one is Cognition, okay? And there was a study that was published in the journal Neurology. It took a look at 132 below average aerobic capacity individuals. And it had them do either 4 times per week cardio or 4 times per week stretching and toning for 6 months. Okay, well, no real shock here. The cardio group lost a lot more weight than the stretching and toning group. Okay, that's not a huge surprise. But when it came down to the brain, this was fascinating. They had more cortical thickness in the cardio group, meaning their brain was actually growing. There was more mass to their brain. But what's interesting is there was actual cognitive improvement in the younger groups. But then there was executive function improvement in the older groups. So across all ages, there were different benefits that came from adding cardio in. And the next one is skin. There was a study published in Dermatology Reports. This is wild. And it analyzed a lot of people, and it found that the more aerobic work they do and the more exercise they did, the better their skin was, but not just on the surface. Like, there was better hydration to the skin. So with this, we look at a study that was published in the American Journal of Dermatology, and it seems to link it back to the anti-inflammatory effect of aerobic exercise. So you actually can see it in someone's skin. Now, on the contrary, you've got someone that overdoes the endurance work. Have you ever seen that crusty old guy that's like 45 years old, but he looks like he's 75 because he's just running all the time? And a lot of these endurance guys look weathered, and that's because they drive up so much reactive oxygen species, so much oxidative stress, that they actually inflict damage on their body. So it's about finding that sweet spot, that balance we talked about earlier when we were talking about longevity. Lastly, increasing that intensity of exercise and that cardio can actually improve muscle growth. Now, previously, we used to always fight about what was called interference, how cardio doesn't benefit resistance training, and resistance training doesn't necessarily benefit cardio. In fact, they actually interfere and cause friction upon each other. Like CrossFit, could be presumably the worst thing you could do under that theory. But there was a newer paper published in 2022 that analyzed 43 studies and essentially found this not to be the case. They found that even simultaneous, concurrent training of cardio work and resistance training work did not impact each other, but specifically did not impact hypertrophy, muscle growth, and did not impact strength. Previously, I've even done videos talking about older data on this, that if you do cardio prior to resistance training, it might decrease your strength. But even if it does, in the short term, decrease strength, the literature, when you look at 43 studies, it doesn't seem to impact hypertrophy. And you look at a CrossFit athlete, it's the perfect example. They are built like a tank, and they're lean and they're muscular, and they're doing cardio and lots of lifting, a lot of times in the same hour, right? So it doesn't seem to interfere like we thought it did. But with this, let's look at some mechanisms. There was a study published in Exercise and Sports Science Reviews that demonstrated that aerobic exercise seems to alter protein metabolism. So something to do with the constant contraction and relaxation that happens when you are doing endurance work alters how much protein synthesis we have, and it decreases how much muscle protein breakdown we have. So if you look at the images on the screen right now, it's these constant repeat contractions that ultimately trigger this altered protein metabolism. And building muscle is all about protein metabolism. You build muscle by breaking muscle down and having muscle protein breakdown and then muscle protein synthesis. But again, cardio and these repeat contractions seem to have an impact that we're starting to uncover now. So it makes sense why some people can be tremendous runners, but also still put on a lot of mass. People like Nick Bare, like guys that really know how to do this really well. I run a lot, I do a lot of cardio, and I actually find it easier to build muscle when I do more cardio. When I only focus on resistance training, I actually find it harder to get stronger. So now there's some data to back it up. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.